Hey y'all, it's Alyssa from Magnolia K Design. It is May, which means it's time for another monthly subscription tutorial. This month we're going to be doing a interchangeable double-sided truck. And both of the inserts that I'm sending y'all are summer. One of them is going to be the watermelon theme and the other is a beach theme. Both of them are super cute, but depending on your style, you can use one or the other, or both. The first thing I'm doing here is separating the pieces. So when you get the kit, it'll be shrink wrapped with 3 different layers. Layer 1 is the watermelon pieces, layer 2 is the beach, and then layer 3 is the truck. Once you get everything separated, then you can begin painting. I started painting the truck first. Now, when you're deciding on colors, keep in mind that there are going to be more inserts coming out soon. So soon I'll have inserts available for all different holidays and all different seasons. So when I chose my colors, I wanted to keep the truck base neutral. That way, any insert that I decide to paint in the future will go with either side. So one side of the truck I decided to paint black, the other one white, but you can certainly pick any color that you want. For the truck railings, I wanted them to look kind of like a stained wood, so I decided to do the baby wipe method. I use this method quite a bit. If you've seen my videos in the past, you'll see it's one of my favorites. You can use a baby wipe or a damp paper towel and just acrylic paint, and you wipe the paint on. This allows the paint to go on super thin and allows some of the wood texture to show through, giving it more of a stained look. For most of the other pieces, I use a makeup sponge to apply the paint. You could use a paintbrush if you prefer, but I like the sponges. These are just makeup wedges that I get from Amazon. You could also get them from Walmart, Target, Ulta, anywhere they sell makeup. And then one tip that I have for you, if you're working with tiny pieces like these lights and mirrors, you can use a little bit of tape, flip the ends facing down, and that way the sticky part is up, and you can stick your little tiny pieces directly to the tape. That way it doesn't move when you try to paint them. Now what I'm doing here is I took a wet paper towel or a damp paper towel and I am cleaning up the edges a little bit. So when these pieces run through the laser, sometimes it gets a little bit of a char or smoke on the edges. And most of the time it's not an issue, but if you are painting a really light color, like I'm doing white or even yellow, sometimes that smoke residue will bleed through the paint and it'll look kind of brown. So by wiping it clean, that prevents that brown from showing through. Now what I'm doing here is I want to paint the tires black. So I'm just marking where the tire stops and the bumper begins. That way I know how far up to paint. And I'm not worried if that line is super straight or not. I just want to make sure I paint above that line, because when you put the bumper on, it's going to cover up any mistakes anyway. So don't worry about that. And then you can start gluing your pieces down. Make sure this railing, that top railing right there, is overhanging at the top just a little bit, and the guides will show you exactly where to glue it down, but that's going to hold your top insert in. Now one side of the truck is going to have scored lines that show you where the lights go, but one side of the truck doesn't. So I'm working on the side that doesn't. So I went ahead and I put that Hello Summer sign there just so I can see where I want to glue the lights down. And then the other side will be much easier because I'll just glue where the scored lines are. And then once you get that side glued down, you can flip it over and glue your pieces down for your other side. And then once the truck is done, we're going to start painting our inserts. So a lot of the painting I will speed through so you can see it, but there's not a whole lot to explain. But there are a few things that I want to slow down and show you. The first one being this ombre look that I did on this Hello Summer sign. So to do the ombre look, pick your two colors. I picked a cream and a teal to kind of look like the beach and the sky meeting. So paint the bottom half of your sign one color. And then you're going to flip it around and you're going to paint the top side the other color. And then to blend them out, you're going to take your sponge for your cream color, dip it in the blue, and then blend it on your paint palette or your scrap piece of paper. And then you can go over that middle line. And what that does is it blends the two colors together. So I start with the cream sponge, dip it in the blue, and then I'll flip it over and I'll use the blue sponge and I'll dip it in the cream and blend that out. And then what you end up with is a blended one color to the other. And you can go back and you can keep working it, blending it out as much as you'd like. And then just continue painting however you want. I will slow down to show you another technique here in just a moment, but I'll let you watch this for a bit. Alright, I'm going to slow it down real quick for this technique. So all I'm doing is a little bit of shading on the surfboard. So use the angled brush that I included in your kit. I filled the little medicine cup up with just a little bit of water. Wet your brush and then dip the very corner of your brush in the darker color paint and blend it out on your paint palette. And then using just the corner of the brush, you can go along the edge. And what that does is the water will mix with that darker blue color and it'll blend it out for you and give you kind of a shaded look. Now this technique can be a little bit tricky at first, so I do recommend maybe practicing on a scrap piece of wood or a scrap piece of paper before you go on to your full project. You're going to want to play around with how much water is in your brush. You don't want the brush too wet, but you don't also want it too dry. You want it somewhere in the middle to give that good blended look. If you have too much water, it's going to be, of course, watered down and it's not going to blend out right. And then, of course, if it's too dry, it's not going to give the shaded look either. So practice a little bit on a scrap piece first before you try this on your actual project. Next, go ahead and glue your sandcastle together. What we're going to do is give the sandcastle a sandy texture, but you're going to want to glue the pieces down first. Then grab your medicine cup, your sand colored paint, and squeeze that in there. And then you're going to add your sand and use your toothpick to mix it all together. I used the majority of the paint that I put in the bottle, and then I also used the entire sand packet. But you can mess around with the sand to paint ratio. I didn't want mine too thick, but I also don't want it too thin because then you're gonna have to do a lot of layers. So give that a good mix, and then use that paintbrush that we used earlier and use that to apply this. It's almost like a paste consistency at this point. And then just add that texture all around your sandcastle. I recommend keeping it away from the bottom, like 1/4 inch of that piece, because that's what's going to slide into the truck. And if you put the sand that low, it's not going to slide in properly. So try to keep it up on the sandcastle itself and not below. But then just go ahead and continue adding the sand until you're happy with the way it looks. Because it is extra thick, it might take a little bit longer to dry than what you're used to. So be patient with that. You can use a hair dryer or like a heat gun to speed up that process if you want to. That's usually what I do because I'm a little impatient. But that's how you add the sand texture. And then lastly, you can start gluing the rest of your pieces on and put it all together. Next, we'll work on the watermelon insert. The first thing I'm going to do is get a wet paper towel and wipe down that watermelon sign because it is going to have a little bit of the laser residue on it. And if you don't, sometimes that laser residue will leak through and turn your white paint brown. So just wipe that clean, let it dry before you paint it. When you go to paint the watermelon sign, I recommend using a makeup sponge, very, very little paint, and using a very light dabbing motion. Go ahead and paint that sign. If you use too much paint, the paint will seep down into the lettering. All right, next we're going to be attaching the magnets. Now this part is really important. There's a very specific way to do this in order to make sure that they work properly and it's interchangeable from one side of the truck to the other. So what you're going to do is you're going to use two magnets stuck together, glue one side to the sign and then the other side to the truck. And the reason I stick them together before I start gluing is just to make sure that I don't glue them upside down. Because of course with magnets, if they're upside down, they're going to repel. And then once one side is dry, you can go ahead and glue the other. And we're just putting a little dot of glue on the magnet and gluing that onto the truck. And then once that's dry, you should be able to pull the sign off by pulling the magnets apart. Now this part is very important if you want this truck to be double-sided and interchangeable. So then using that same sign, flip the truck over, add another magnet to the back so we make sure that we're not gluing the magnets upside down, and then glue it down to the truck again. Now to add magnets to the second insert, go ahead and add one magnet to each part of where it connects. Add a drop of glue and then glue your sign down. Once everything is dry, this project is complete. You can go ahead and test each sign on both sides of the truck, make sure they snap into place properly, but you should be good to go. You can also display your truck by making it stand up straight. I did include a sign stand in there. That's that long rectangular piece with the notches cut out. The tires fit right into those notches and make the truck stand up. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to see next month's tutorial.